Canon.
Yeah. Actually, I was gonna say that it's someone that intentionally kills a person that's not in self-defense.
Not in self-defense. So we got DUI, self-defense, any other instances we can think of that might cause us to have some issues. And you are?
Rangaswamy is my last name. Rangaswamy.
Rangaswamy. I may have to work on that one, but I got it right now.
Yeah.
Rangaswamy. Ms. Rangaswamy, what were you going to add?
Just in the case of the DUI, you could say that death was preventable, so that you kill someone in a way that you could have prevented that death.
How do we want to handle at least most DUIs? How do we do that?
Alex Hyman as manslaughter.
If all we're doing right now is trying to define murder, we might not have to worry about the DUI situation, because at least most DUIs we're going to find, not all, but most, and that's where things get confusing, are handled as something other than murder, right? So we do want intentionally, and intentionally might be the way we actually distinguish murder from manslaughter, because you have to have that more serious culpability, okay? In the gray t-shirt, you are?
Paul, Jesse Paul, Paul. Like,
Who's Paul, okay?
I was just thinking, like in hospitals and stuff, when people want to be put to death, like how that would incorporate euthanasia.
So euthanasia,
That's a whole discussion in and of itself.
okay? Somebody might intentionally kill a person as a mercy killing or euthanasia. Okay? Any others we want to sort of add into the mix that might complicate things? And you are?
Ms. Mwanga.
Ms. Mwanga.
For DUIs, I think you could say that murder is the non-negligent killing of someone. And then I also might add something about rationality. So
Rationality.
Murder is irrational, so
So a planned killing in order for profit would not be murder, because that would be rational as can be. I've just been watching old seasons of A Game of Thrones.
Oh my God.
And you want to talk about some rational killings. Some scarily rational killings.
Well, it's still kind of irrational because we don't consider murder for profit reasonable.
We will talk so much about the definitions of the reasonable person and rationality. You will be sick of it. So since that's true, I'm going to postpone that discussion for another day. In the back, you are?
Mr. Webb.
Mr. Webb.
And it's part of like a military effort or during the war, you would consider it murder.
A soldier killing. A soldier killing, and the enemy would be someone, that is the soldier, intentionally, right? Most soldiers act intentionally, if that's their orders and that's what the mission requires, intentionally kills the enemy. Is that murder? We consider that murder. In the back with the blue.
Mr. Franz.
Mr. Frame.
When you kill somebody like with a chair or something, like when someone's on death row, it's not really murder.
I beg your pardon?
When someone's killed, like capital murder, capital execution.
Oh, okay.
What do we take from all of this? The fact that we have issues when there's self-defense claims involved, when there's euthanasia, a soldier killing, capital punishment. What's the takeaway from all of this? And you are?
Craig Lamb.
Mr. Lamb.
There are many exceptions to the definition.
The rules get complicated. And the way a statutory code deals with this complicated situation is by either exemptions or defenses or categorizations that are put off limits. What we want to do today is simply have a straightforward approach and say, okay, we might have self-defense as a defense that we have to look at separately and understand it. We might make a special rule one way or the other. Some jurisdictions might say, we're not going to make an exception for euthanasia. If you engage in a mercy killing we're not going to allow a defense for that because we think that's still murder, even if the person said they wanted it. Other jurisdictions might say, no, we don't consider that murder. We consider that the person acting on their own, and it might depend on how they do it. All sorts of issues. The soldier killing, obviously, if the soldier acts on behalf of his or her country, his or her country is not going to punish him or her for that act of taking a life, right? And capital punishment, again, the state, the government is acting, so the state is not going to deem that a criminal act. Now, outside observers might question the legitimacy of the state's actions, but the state itself will not. You are?
Jessica Harper.
Harper?
Mhm.
It's Harper.
So the long story short is, there is no true way to even approach getting a perfect definition of murder because different jurisdictions have different rules. There are too many circumstances, aggravating circumstances, mitigating circumstances. There's no true, pure definition. Is that what you're getting at?
Oh, well, absolutely. There's certainly no one Socratic ideal, right? There's no one ideal definition of murder. Different jurisdictions have different nuances to their definitions. Some put some things in the definition. Some have multiple definitions, as Kentucky does. Kentucky has 2 different types of murder, as you will see, or you can look at if you look in your KRS. I'm not getting into that today. But yeah, there is no Platonic ideal of what constitutes murder. What I want to do, though, is take this part, knowing that it is only a working definition from which we need a lot of exceptions, for which we're going to have to sort of understand that it is only a starting point, and freeze it in place for the moment, okay? And now I want to ask you a different question. Somebody define for me arson. Didn't expect that, did you? And you are?
Morton.
Is Morton.
Morton like assault.
Like assault.
The intentional starting of a fire.
Intentional starting of a fire. And Ms. Morton, I'm a romantic kind of guy. I like to have, on a cold winter evening, I'll get some firewood in the fireplace, some smooth music playing, the lights down low, and I'll light the fireplace to set the right mood with the right person. Does that make me an arsonist?
Maybe add to.
Oh, we gotta add something. Because intentionally starting a fire.
A large scale fire.
A large scale. I have a big fireplace. What makes arson beyond? Wow. My God, this is the most hands I've ever seen in my life. You guys are awesome. And you are?
Samantha Mullins.
Mullins.
Yes.
It's Mullins.
Yes. Would the intention have to be to destroy property?
Setting of a fire with the intent to destroy property. Okay? What about that? You are?
Doninger, Zach.
I'm sorry?
Zach Doninger.
Doninger.
I would say to destroy evidence or harm somebody.
To destroy evidence. We'll get the special counsel on that right away. I don't know about evidence. That's that's more probably obstruction of justice. Might be, is that essential to the definition of arson? Right? It might be that makes it worse. Maybe that may be kind of an aggravating factor that the result. Remember I said harm, the importance of harm as one of our units. We will talk about how important is it that you did one kind of harm versus another kind of harm with the act that you committed. You are?
Jamie Scowcroft.
Ms. Scowcroft. Okay.
So with the case of the California fires, they just recently arrested someone for
That's right.
arson. So that doesn't necessarily mean property is part of the definition. So wouldn't it just be the intent to destroy a mass of sorts?
You guys haven't started property yet, have you?
No.
I get to teach you some property before Professor Ross.
Yes.
what was destroyed by the California wildfires would certainly count as property.
Okay.
Right? So, doesn't really, if that would be fine if we limited it to the intent to destroy property. Let's leave it at that, because this is enough to suffice to make the point I want to make. It doesn't have to be large scale. Starting a fire with the intent to destroy property. Many arson statutes require that what you burn be a building. Maybe there's another crime for wildfires, right? Others do not require it to be a building. But it suffices to make the point. Given this, how does murder differ from arson?
The act that's carried out, I mean, they're both intentionally done.
Good. The act, or the actus reus, to be technical about it, the actus reus differs. The mens rea is the same. In terms of what was in the mind, the mental state is the mens rea. The mens rea is the same between these two offenses. That is, they are both crimes of intent. The act you carried out is different. One is burning, setting a fire, let's say of a building, depending on what the code says. And the other is a different act, taking a life. Taking a life might end up resulting from this, but it wasn't the intent of the arsonist, right? If the arsonist if the prosecution can show beyond a reasonable doubt, get used to these initials, because you'll see them on the board all the time. BRD. What does that stand for?
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond, who said that? Somebody said that vigorously. Very good. All right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. If the prosecution can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the arsonist intended to take a life, right? There was somebody in the building who they wanted dead. Then they could charge them with murder because they would fulfill all the elements of murder. They could charge both arson and murder, right? Because they intentionally killed the person and arson was simply the means. So sometimes they overlap. But if you can't show, if the prosecution cannot show that the arsonist intended to take a life, they can still charge arson. Because arson is the actus reus of setting the fire and the mens rea of intentionally trying to destroy property. Okay? Every crime differs from every other crime, either by its actus reus being different, or its mens rea being different, or both. Or both. Murder is different from manslaughter, not because the actus reus is different. The actus reus is the same, taking a life, killing. But the mens rea is different. The mens rea for murder generally is intent, generally. And the mens rea for manslaughter is usually something like recklessness or negligence of some kind. We will see nuances of that, but that's the basic, right? So manslaughter and murder differ on the mental state side. Arson and murder differ on the actus reus side. You should be able to define your crimes by identifying, just by looking at them, and hopefully by the end of the semester you certainly will be able to, just by saying, aha, that's the actus reus, that's the mens rea, that's how I define this crime. And that's how it differs from this other crime. And if I see this fact, I know that we can establish this crime, but not this crime. Because the facts may show negligence, but they don't show intent. So that means I can look for this crime and not that. You match up the facts to the elements, and that's how you have a criminal prosecution. I saw a hand in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, so we define murder as someone intentionally kills a person. But if you kill an animal,
Yeah.
a dog, that'd be murder.
No. Might be cruelty to animals, right?
Different laws. for
Different law, right? This is taking, killing another person. That's for murder. That's for murder. Okay? Yeah.
Still criminal though, isn't it?
Depends on the state. And it depends on the circumstances, right? If you kill an animal because you're a vet and the pet is, brought in to be euthanized, then no, it's not a crime. Always look at the facts. Facts are really, really important. I can give you all the law you might ever want and then some. But good lawyering has to ask the question, what were the facts? In the context of the criminal law, it's do these facts satisfy the elements, and can the prosecution prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? That's what we'll be doing all semester long, in one way or another. Okay? All right. What are the basic purposes served by taking action against lawbreakers? That is, why do we have a criminal law in the first place? Again, your name?
Jessica Harper.
Ms. Harper.
I might be able to remember all 5, but the 3 that I definitely remember are retribution,
Start with that.
deterrence.
Pause at that.
Sorry.
Pause at that. I got stuff to write. Retribution. Why do I want to do retribution by itself first?
Well, let's see, to quote a very famous saying, almost like an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
To put in one of the most basic layman's terms, I suppose, an eye for an eye.
Well, that's sort of a definition of retribution, but why is it distinct? Why is it distinct? You are?
Patrick Williams.
Williams? Mr. Williams.
Because it's one of the 2 main ways that we categorize it, with the other one being utilitarianism.
Good. All of the others that Ms. Harper was about to go into, and I'll let her in a minute, come under this general heading. They are subcategories, right? So I don't want them put alongside retribution, because that'll be more confusing. So I want to first talk about retribution on its own, and then go through the various utilitarian ones. Okay? So tell me, why is retribution unique? What's different about it compared to all of the utilitarian ones? As a justification for punishment.
Retribution is basically almost like just desserts, if that makes any sense.
I love desserts.
Or at least that's one of the baseline philosophies that underlines it. Whereas utilitarianism seeks more to almost sort of compensate, like with the case, or not necessarily compensate.
Generalization. Go ahead. You are?
Taylor Baucus.
Sorry?
Taylor Baucus.
Baucus.
Yes.
Okay.
Retribution is a moral obligation. A wrong was done, so it needs to be corrected.
There was harm done, a criminal act committed, equals punishment. And what is not relevant to the retributive goal?
The circumstances to what happened, so.
I don't know about that, because we need to know what was the criminal act to know what sort of punishment is merited to balance the scales, because it's all about balancing the scales. But what's not relevant? In the back, way in the back. You are?
Amy Wagner.
Ms. Wagner.
It doesn't matter what the consequences of the punishment are to anybody else.
What does that mean? Explain that further. You're right on it. Give me more.
Okay, so he did something wrong or she did something wrong, and that whole basis deserves punishment. It doesn't matter what the consequences are towards society, towards the victim.
Toward the consequences of what? The consequences of the punishment, right? Utilitarian arguments as a justification for punishment ask, what is best for society? Will this punishment, will convicting this person, will defining this as a crime serve society's interests, right? And we'll talk about what those interests are in various categories in a minute. Retribution doesn't care about any of that. Even if it's not best for society, even if it serves no forward-looking purpose. We punish because we have to balance the scales because a crime was committed. Period. We need retribution, as the name suggests, for the fact that a crime was committed. So I hand it over here. Yeah.
I was just going to go a little further with that. The retribution side of it is to pay back the individual, the one that was committed against.
It's the individual and it's society. Society has to have a balanced system, right? But not because society will be better off, but just because if you have a crime that must not go unpunished, and the crime has to be and the punishment has to fit that crime, period. Yeah.
Baker, and I'm having trouble trying to explain this thought. So, with Dudley and Stevens, they're probably not going to get shipwrecked and be in another war. So, but they still get the death penalty. So
Sort of.
that's retribution.
Sort of. You would think that. As we'll see, they didn't actually do that. But yes, and the idea, the defense of that, in defense of that, the Crown, that is the English government, says this is such a heinous act that it must get the most serious possible punishment for the sake of there might be other arguments as well, but just because leaving it unpunished means the crime is never balanced out. That's it, right? And so we would say, if we did not want that punishment, we might look to one of the other utilitarian purposes and say, it doesn't serve those purposes. Society doesn't need any of those purposes achieved in the case of Dudley and Stevens, so why punish them? The retributive to this would say, so what? Just because those purposes aren't achieved, we still achieve retribution for the death that they brought about, and that's all it is. All right. Utilitarian arguments do demand us that we ask the question, what is best for society? Would punishing this person, would prosecuting this person achieve one of these goals? Give me one of them, Sarah.
Deterrence.
Deterrence. And there's actually two subcategories of deterrence. But before we get to that, I need you to open that envelope. Yes. And what does it say?
Deterrence.
Deterrence is the word of the day. Now, what will be in the word of the day bag almost every day is candy. I have a sweet tooth. I assume most of you do too. And if you don't, you have a friend or child who has a sweet tooth. But today is special. And today, and for the next couple of weeks at least, is special because about a week or so ago, I was at a charity fundraiser, and I won a silent auction for a gift basket of Muth's chocolate. And there is some real, it's not just the usual Kit Kat and Snickers and Starburst in there. There is some awesome packaged chocolate in there that you will want to fight for. And you will get your pick. You don't get to go for the whole bag.
Oh, dang it.
You get one choice out of the bag, and that will be all semester long. And occasionally I'll also have something else. Sometimes I might have tickets to a U of L game of some kind, or whatever. But something special in the bag, and I'll let you know if and when I do. But that's our first word of the day, is deterrence. Now that you've won that, you have to really earn it, right? Tell me the two kinds of deterrence.
General deterrence and specific deterrence.
General and specific. And what's the difference between them?
General is towards people as a whole in general. Specific is towards the specific individual who committed the offense.
So general says to everyone out there in society, look at how we are punishing Dudley and Stevens, or whomever. We are taking this crime seriously, so if you commit it, you're gonna end up going to jail for 30 years, or get the death penalty, or whatever it happens to be. And hopefully that will deter others, knowing that the punishment is certain, swift, and severe. General deterrence. And society will be better off if people are deterred from committing crimes they would otherwise commit. The cost of the crime exceeds the benefit of the crime, and thus we get less crime. Specific deterrence. Right? This person's already committed the crime, so we obviously failed to deter them, right? Duh, by definition, we failed to deter them. But maybe we know, obviously the death penalty doesn't work for this, but if we know we're going to really hammer them, come down hard on them, they might not do it again. So specific deterrence is about recidivism. Specific deterrence is about recidivism. Don't commit this crime again, because we just showed you, and we would be showing you over the next 10 years while you sit in a jail cell, that you don't want to lose your freedom again. Okay? So deterrence is one way. Society is better off because less crime gets committed down the road, either by the general public seeing this sentence or the individual defendant doesn't do it again. Okay? What's another utilitarian?
Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation. Tell me about that. Why is that utilitarian?
Because it's better for society for these people to be rehabilitated and not commit those crimes again, and they teach them how to work so they have a sellable skill after they get out.
The individual is better situated to be a contributing member of society, not somebody who is a burden on taxpayers. Right? So we rehabilitate them, get job skills, get them to see that obeying the law is a social value they should honor, and by rehabilitating them while punishing them, or perhaps while they're on probation, or whenever we engage in rehabilitative efforts, society is better off because they're less likely to be a criminal and they're more likely to make positive net contribution to rehabilitation. And you are?
Olivia Edwardson.
Edwardson.
Incapacitation.
Incapacitation. I'm going to move over here for that. It may be confusing because it's going to look like it's under retribution, but it's just because I don't have any room. So remember, this is still utilitarian incapacitation. Tell me about incapacitation.
If you imprison a criminal, it takes away the power for them to commit crimes against people in society.
And a safer society is a society that's better off, right? If somebody, they can't commit a crime except in a very isolated environment against very few potential victims, right? While they're in jail, right? They might assault a prison guard, they might assault a fellow inmate, but for the most part, the rest of us, most of society, 99.99% of society, is safe if we take away their capacity to commit another crime, at least while they're being punished. So society is better off because less crime is committed and fewer of us are subject to that crime. Right? So these are all utilitarian justifications for punishment. Yeah.
What about the concept of restorative justice? Could that fall under utilitarianism?
The concept of restorative justice, I think, is less of a justification for punishment than an argument against punishment. Right? The idea of restorative justice is that we actually are worse, that it's an argument against the utilitarian arguments. That is, it's a challenge to them. It's saying we are not better off if we punish. We are better off if we find some way to make society whole, make the victims whole, without necessarily punishing the criminal. The criminal expresses regret, if the criminal comes into compliance with society's norms and values, that is better than punishment. And that we can do that through a process of reconciliation that actually makes society better off in a way that says to the utilitarian, we think there's a better alternative. So I would say restorative justice falls as more of a challenge to the justifications for punishment than it does under the justifications for punishment. Others might argue that. Others might argue that we could incorporate restorative justice principles into a system where there's still punishment and achieve some sort of balance or best of both worlds situation. But I find it very hard to reconcile that. Which is not to say I'm expressing a preference for either one, but I think restorative justice really is a challenge to the whole idea of criminal punishment as achieving these goals, or at least achieving the general overall best utilities of support society. Okay? All right. We will stop there. We will do both Hendricks and Dudley and Stevens on Wednesday, and you are now officially law students. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.